Thank you, Deputy Vice-Chancellor. And now I'm going to welcome back Kevin to speak on behalf of the graduates. Kevin graduated today with the Bachelor of Engineering Honours, gaining, as you've just heard, a GPA of 7. Kevin is highly respected by his fellow students and academic staff and models VU values of respect and academic excellence at all times. He has volunteered for many college events, including open day activities, and last year received a college-sponsored summer research scholarship. Please welcome Kevin Yock.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, academics and teaching staff, fellow graduates, family and friends. It is an honor to give a valedictory speech on behalf of all graduating class today. I'd like to share a story with you today. I started my undergraduate journey more than a decade ago at the Malaysian campus of Monash University. Like most of my peers, I wasn't very sure what I wanted out of life, and although my academic performance was certainly not outstanding, it wasn't too bad either. I was the average student. Just before the beginning of my third year, an incident happened which ultimately led to a gradual but radical change in my life. I got mugged by a pair of bandits. It was brutal, it was bloody, but it was probably over in less than a minute. Fortunately, I survived the incident without major complications. You have no idea how grateful I am just to be alive today. Thank you. Over the following months, my inner transformation began. Having realized just how fragile life is, I promised myself to live mine to the fullest. I would push myself beyond my comfort zones every single day. I would talk to people whom I'd normally not have the courage to approach. And that was very new for me because I was always the quiet guy in class. In a real sense, I felt liberated from my old self. I became more open and outgoing, but at the same time, I became more introspective, inquisitive, and philosophical. I remember asking my friends questions such as, what's your passion in life? Or, if you only had 1 month left to live, what would you do? Or, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do with your life? Eventually, and perhaps quite naively, I became increasingly disillusioned by the materialistic and superficial views of my peers and society at large. And I decided to quit my studies to become a full-time philosopher. I wanted to figure out the meaning of life, the universe, and everything else. And I can tell you it's not 42. Being young and foolish, I dropped out of my engineering degree at the beginning of my 4th and final year. And in doing so, I failed all the units I enrolled in because I didn't even sit for the exams. I flew back to my home in Mauritius and set to work. Having lots of time on my hands, I read and explored to my heart's content. I turned to soap making and gardening and raising chickens and ducks. I also enrolled in culinary school and eventually opened a business making and selling French macarons. 4 years and 10,000 macarons later, it started to dawn on me that perhaps quitting my engineering degree was not the wisest of choices. I knew I was a scientist at heart, and having invested so much time and money in my education, I knew that the next step for me was to finish my degree. With the encouragement of my family, I decided to resume my studies at Monash. However, I was rejected because I had failed too many units before. I was devastated. However, I was determined to get a degree, so I moved on and I sent an application to VU. And 2 years later, well, here I am giving this very speech. Thank you. In all honesty, I never thought that I'd be standing here one day. Victoria University gave me a second chance, a chance to set things straight, and a chance to make a difference. I'm immensely grateful for the opportunity and definitely made the most of it. I am now a firm believer that I can achieve almost anything if I put my heart to it. And so can every single one of you. Trust me, you don't have to get mugged to do what I've done. This may come as a surprise to many of you, but I was never the one to chase marks. More than anything, what I wanted was knowledge and understanding. My good grades were just the byproduct of a relentless thirst for knowledge and a rage to master the subject at hand. It is said that education is not the filling of a bucket, but the lighting of a fire. And that was my mantra for the past 2 years. It was a lot of effort, but I found that going the extra mile was always worth it. And guess what? There are no traffic jams along the extra mile. There are no speed limits either, so roll on, my friends. It will be worth it. Of course, this speech would not be complete without thanking those who made it all possible. First of all, thanks to my dear parents, Jeanette and Patrick, who are watching the ceremony more than 8,000 kilometers away on YouTube. I love you from the bottom of my heart, and forgive me for not saying this more often. Of course, thanks to all the telecommunications engineers who made the live streaming possible. Thanks to my loving family for your infinite patience during these long, unpredictable years. In particular, thanks to Chris and Val for your invaluable support during my time here in Melbourne. Thanks to the academic staff, and in particular, Daniel Lai and Wee Sit Lee, for your continuous guidance and unconditional support. I would also like to thank all the parents, families, and friends of all the graduates here today for making today a reality. Whether you realize it or not, you have done an incredible service to society by supporting and encouraging the engineers and scientists of tomorrow, who will, in no small part, play a role in shaping the future of mankind. So thank you. And last but not least, thanks to you, fellow graduates, and the extraordinary people whom I proudly call my friends, for making this a journey to remember. Thank you. As with everything else in life, the chapter ahead will be full of positive and negative experiences. We all know that. But I learned that we can always turn the negatives into positives. If you're a mathematician, then you can just use the modulus function. But for the rest of mankind, well, good experiences become good memories, and bad experiences become good lessons. It wasn't obvious back then, but getting mugged was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. It gave me the courage to take a road less traveled and to pursue my passions. You never know where your passions will take you, but I guarantee you it will take you somewhere as long as you don't give up on it. My experience in the kitchen landed me a job at Brunetti Cafe during my previous winter break, and I loved it. If you don't know what your passions are, like Steve Jobs says, keep looking and stay optimistic. To the optimist, the glass is half full, and to the pessimist, the glass may be half empty, but to the scientist, the glass is twice as big as it needs to be. So don't be afraid to think out of the box, to try new things. Life is short. If you hear a voice in your head that says, "I cannot cook," then by all means cook, and I can tell you that voice will be silenced. If you ever think you're too small to make a difference, think of the last time you had to sleep with a mosquito in the room. You are not too small to have a positive impact on this world. Never forget that. I read a quote once which said, "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." Because once we realize how much potential we have, not as scientists or engineers, but as human beings, our duty is to act on it, to push forward and to reach for the stars. The biggest room in the world is the room for self-improvement. Maybe the civil engineers here can help us build that room. It wasn't an easy journey for almost all of us who had to juggle full-time studies and part-time or even full-time work. Some of us are married, and some of us even have children. Despite all these social and professional commitments, despite the financial and emotional struggles, here we are today. We did it, and we can be proud of ourselves. Trust me, you deserve just as much praise as I do, if not more. So congratulations, class of 2017. At the risk of breaking the laws of science, I wish you all perpetual growth and infinite wisdom, constant inner peace, and endless happiness. May you be the very best you can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing your very inspiring story with us all here today.